Hi, everybody. This is Christopher Phillips, the founder of Democracy Cafe. Our website is democracycafe.org, and our flagship initiatives are Democracy Cafe and Socrates Cafe. This is our 29th year, and in celebration and commemoration of the UN designated day, International Day for Democracy, I'm interviewing having exchanged with some of our great movers and shakers in the pro-open society arena. And my guest today is wonderful Robert P. George. Robert, you are the McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence and Director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions at Princeton University. You've been such a wonderful supporter of all we do, and I had this great debate between you and our mutual friend and brother Cornel West that we did through Florida Gulf Coast University. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and taking the time.
My pleasure, Christopher. Thank you very much.
So, Robert, in your estimation, what is the state of democracy right now? And let's focus right now on the United States. I'm getting a lot of the sky is falling type mentality, that there's a tendency towards authoritarianism, that we have a too compliant, too complicit congressional branch and also on the Supreme Court. But is that necessarily so?
Well, there's a critique of our circumstances and the condition of democracy from the right, and there's one from the left. Both, I believe, are to some extent exaggerations, and both, to some extent, have truth in them. So I'm not panicking. I don't think we're about to go down the tubes and lose our democracy.
Mhm.
But I do think that there are grounds for concern, and that those on the conservative side and those on the liberal side can work within their own traditions of thought and work with each other to try to strengthen the foundations of democracy. Now, I'm a two cheers for democracy guy, Christopher. I'm not a three cheers for democracy. Just as I'm a two cheers for the market economy guy, but I'm not a three cheers for the market economy guy.
Okay.
Two cheers because I do think that the market economy generates lower prices, higher quality.
Mhm.
It lifts people in large numbers out of poverty.
Mhm.
On the other hand, it's got its flaws as well. And unless it operates within moral constraints, anything can go on the market. The market will buy and sell anything there
Right.
is, including things that should not be bought and sold. And of course, it can generate inequalities of the sort that are very damaging to other valuable institutions of society. Same with democracy. So I think democracy is a very good system. I'm for it. I want our democracy to flourish, but it's a system, and it's an imperfect system, and it's a necessarily imperfect system.
Necessarily
And
imperfect.
there's necessarily imperfect. That's right, because it's made up of human beings. Human beings conduct democracies,
Mhm.
and we're imperfect, and we're going to make mistakes, and our flaws and our vices are going to be reflected in democratic outcomes. I ask my students a simple question. What was the form of government that murdered Socrates? A democracy. A democracy, my students
It
say. A
subverted the
democracy. Never thought of
mechanisms of
that, right?
democracy.
Because we valorize democracy. We say democracy is the greatest thing, but it's a human thing. It's an imperfect thing. Just because an outcome is democratic doesn't mean that it's necessarily good or just or right. Parallel here with the market economy. Just because something is the fruit of a market transaction doesn't mean that it's just or right or
Mhm.
good.
Mhm.
So two cheers for democracy in the same way as two cheers for the market. But I think the best form of democracy, they're all fallible, they're all
Right.
imperfect, but I think the best form is what I call Republican democracy.
Okay.
And by Republican democracy, I mean that's what political philosophers sometimes call a mixed kind of government.
Right.
It's got powerful democratic elements,
Right.
but there are other non-democratic, there are competing elements in it as well. And the purpose of those competing elements is to check power and render it more accountable.
Right.
And that's power exercised by anybody.
Mhm.
Those who are elected and exercise power in virtue of their election, and those who are appointed and
Mhm.
not elected. and electorally non-accountable. And in some cases, as in the case of judges in our federal court system,
Mhm.
serving for life with no accountability to the electorate at any point in the future.
Nine people
Now,
who
I'm
had
not
an
against those
unwieldy sense of
non
power.
that's right. So I'm not against those non-democratic elements. In fact, I think they're good because I think power, including in democracies, always has to be checked. That is the power of elected representatives of the people. In a certain sense, the power of the people themselves has to be limited.
Mhm.
Otherwise you get things like the murder of Socrates. Uh,
Yeah, this is the
so I think it's
thing.
very important to make sure that those mechanisms for the checking of power and the rendering of power
Right.
accountable are very important. And then just on the final point, I know I'm lecturing here, I'm preaching actually, but
No,
one final
reach
point
on,
is
Brother Robbie.
among the things that need to be in place for democracies as political systems to
Mhm.
function well and justly are healthy, flourishing, non-political institutions of civil society, families, churches, and other religious institutions, civic associations. Because after all, who forms citizens to be fit for self-government?
Mhm.
Who forms citizens to be citizens who can actually preserve a republican democracy? It's
Mhm.
not the government itself, however democratic or republican it might be. It's not the economy. It's not economic systems. It's not courts. Who
Mhm.
forms citizens with the virtues necessary?
Mhm.
Honesty, self-restraint, self-discipline, public spiritedness, concern about others. Who forms people to be good democratic citizens and preserve democratic polities? It's the family. It's mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and auntie and uncle and pastor and coach and teacher and librarian,
Mhm.
assisted by the institutions of civil society going beyond the family, such as religious institutions and other cultural and civic institutions. So, you want democracy? You need a healthy civil society.
Right. What is that state of health right now, in terms of our civil? If you go
Mixed.
to something like X, formerly known as Twitter, and people launching insults at each other, hiding behind computer screens, you don't even know who's real and who's not, for heaven's sake. Um,
That's a downside. On the other side, on the other hand,
right.
these social media platforms do give people voices. So we have alternative sources, for example, of news and communication to three networks
Mhm.
and three major national newspapers, and that's it. So there's a plus side and there's a minus side. I mean,
Right. I mean, there
I'm
is
a
more
critic. I'm a
civic
critic of
journalism.
Twitter and Facebook
Right.
and Insta and TikTok. Just like other people are critics. I mean, I'm a parent and now a grandparent, and I worry about those social
Right.
media platforms. On the other hand, let's not neglect the positive contributions that they
Right.
make, and let's try to make them better.
Yeah. So you and I have some things in common. So I have dual U.S. Greek citizenship. My grandparents immigrated through Ellis Island 102 years ago when,
No, mhm.
as Mussolini's fascists had taken over their island. It had first been taken in possession by the during the Italo-Turkish War, and they just finally had no hope, and they came through Ellis Island. And so I've kind of brought the family back full circle by also having Greek citizenship. And that little island is South Aegean. You can see Turkey from the shores of it. And my yaya, my Greek grandmother, taught me about Socrates and other pre-Socratics, including some unheralded women philosophers. My mother's side of the family is from Tams, West Virginia. She was born in a coal mining camp. So you
Do
and
have
I,
a lot.
so you and I have
Yeah.
immigrant that side, but we also have the West Virginia connection.
That's true. And even on our immigrant side, you're Greek. My father and his people are Syrian. So, we have the Eastern tradition of Christianity and Eastern Orthodoxy in common. Now, we Syrians, we have respect for the Greeks. You are the second best makers of baklava in the world.
Oh, see, you're starting something right now, and you know it.
Yeah, and the other thing you people do, and I'll never understand it, is you put lemon on your grape leaves. Who puts lemon on their grape leaves?
Well, what are lemons for? They're just right there on this property.
Lemons are for lemon meringue pie. They're not to put on grape leaf.
Okay, so what can we do to make sure that the very mechanisms of democracy, in our case, a constitutional republic of a representative democratic bent, that the checks and balances stay in check and stay? What can we, the people, do to make sure there isn't tendencies or trendings among any party or any president towards authoritarianism, towards subverting those mechanisms? What can ordinary
Okay.
people do?
All right. So first of all, we have to recognize some problems that did not arise yesterday, are very evident problems today, are in most cases problems that have existed for a long time. At least the roots of the problems have been there for a long time.
So
So I'll
having
give
a
you,
long-term view.
yeah, so we have to have a long-term view. We also have to understand better than the American public does. We've been very poor at public education. The American people do not understand their constitutional system. I don't know what happened to basic civics,
They haven't
but
they haven't read the Constitution.
no, no, that's right. They don't read the Constitution. They're not taught the Constitution in school. In my constitutional law class at law school, we didn't read the Constitution. I mean, we read cases, we read all sorts of cases about the Constitution. So, but it's not just a matter of reading the Constitution. It really
Right.
is understanding the civic order, the structures of the civic order, understanding that our national government is a government of delegated and enumerated powers, not of general jurisdiction. It's the states that are governments of general jurisdiction exercising plenary authority, what we call police powers to protect public health, safety, and morals, and to advance the common good. There are limits on what the federal government can do by virtue of that theory of its power. Secondly, even within the federal government, there's a separation of powers. Now, most Americans have heard of the separation of powers, but do they actually know what it is? Well, the polling data is not very encouraging here. Most Americans can't name the three branches of government, much less understand how they are separated and how they check each other and render each other accountable.
Mhm.
So, we got to go to work there. Now, as I say, some of the problems going beyond the public education issue
Mhm.
are of long standing. They didn't arise yesterday and they've got pretty deep roots. Take, for example, the abdication of authority by the Congress and the expansion of authority beyond any constitutional limits by the executive branch. Donald Trump didn't start this. He's certainly pushing it along,
Right.
but we had it with Barack Obama. We had it with Bill Clinton.
Mhm.
We had it with Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
We had it with Lyndon Baines Johnson,
And this thing called
all the way
signing
back to
statements.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson,
Yeah.
right?
They're
So
creating
we
like
had
almost a
this
fourth branch with these signing statements and things.
signing statements. That's right. The non-enforcement of the law, right? Trump's not enforcing the TikTok bill. Well, he's not the first president to decide I'm just not going to enforce laws that I don't like. Obama refused to enforce the Defense of Marriage Act. I mean, and Congress didn't just have its power stolen by the executive or by the courts. That's another issue. Courts exercising essentially legislative power.
Mhm.
Congress didn't just have their power stolen, they abdicated it,
Mhm.
right? They gave away their power. I often say to my students, Christopher, that the most neglected word in the entire Constitution is the very first word of the very first and only sentence of the very first article of the Constitution. That's the word all. Now, if you think of the Constitution, it begins with a preamble, which says why we're going to do what we're going to do. And then you've got the articles that do it. The very first article pertains to the legislative branch, the second to the executive branch, the third to the judicial branch. All right. So we look at that first one, first sentence, only sentence, first word, all. All legislative powers herein granted are vested in a Congress consisting of a House of Representatives and a Senate. Now, all doesn't mean some. It doesn't even mean most or many. All means all. That is, the executive doesn't have any.
Mhm.
The courts don't have any. Congress is supposed to be the lawmaking body. The president's job is to faithfully execute the law.
Mhm.
The court's job is to apply the law to facts in disputed cases. But the making of law is Congress's job. And yet, who honestly could say that we, in our lives as citizens and members of various sorts of organizations, businesses, communities, and so forth, that the laws under which we and our affairs are governed are made by Congress, at least those at the federal level. Well,
Mhm.
some of them are made by Congress, but most of the rules we live under weren't made by Congress. They were made by executive branch officers in the federal agencies, and in many cases, they were
They're like this,
manufactured
these
by
books.
the courts.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And, sometimes Congress has officially delegated powers. It has the authority to do that, but it's not living up to its constitutional
Mhm.
obligations when it does that more than absolutely necessary. And the majority of times, it's just that there's been no formal delegation of power. The agencies are just exercising the power, or
Mhm.
the courts are basically legislating from the bench, and
Mhm.
Congress is sitting back and letting them get away with it. Now, in part, you can understand that politically, it's one of the downsides of democracy. What do politicians like to do? They like to do popular stuff. They don't like to do unpopular stuff because it costs them their jobs.
Chutzpah.
So if
They
you're a
need chutzpah.
Republican, what do you like to do? You like to cut taxes. If you're a Democrat, what do you like to do? Spending programs that give people money or stuff. Okay? That's the easy stuff. The hard stuff to do is to raise taxes or to say, no, we can't afford these
Mhm.
programs. So
Mhm.
what they don't like to do is make controversial decisions. So those get shunted off to the courts,
All
who
right.
have no business making them constitutionally, or to the executive
All right.
branch.
What?
And where Congress doesn't act in a way that a president wants, you have a president like Obama who'll say, okay, well, I've got a phone and I've got a pen, so I'm going to legislate. He has no business legislating.
Yeah.
Not because he's Obama or because he's a Democrat. No president, Republican or Democrat,
Right.
Reagan, Bush, Obama, Biden, has any business legislating. All legislative authority herein granted shall be vested in a Congress consisting of a House of Representatives and a Senate.
Well, what did you think then of I mean, these were congressionally mandated departments of the real evisceration of U.S. Agency for International Development and the making of skeletal Department of Education. Have you been alarmed by that, or do you feel like it's within the parameters of executive power?
I don't actually think that it's within the parameters of executive power, but Trump didn't start this.
Okay.
I'm not a Trump
But he
supporter, so
sure
I'm
is
not defending
finishing
him.
it.
But I'm saying he is simply taking advantage of precedents that were set by previous presidents, including presidents like Clinton and Obama, where people on the other side of people in their political party, on their side of the ideological spectrum,
Hmm.
didn't make a peep.
Hmm.
Where were folks on the left who are complaining now about Trump, rightly complaining about Trump, when Obama said, I got a phone and a pen. If Congress doesn't act, I'll act on my own, or sending his
So
dear
this whole
colleague letters to
tradition of
universities.
presidential usurpation, you're saying goes quite far back.
And we can take it back beyond, Reagan to Lyndon Baines Johnson, and beyond that to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, massively. You talk about executive orders, you know. And then back behind that to Woodrow Wilson, who, when he was the inaugural occupant of the chair that I now hold at Princeton, the McCormick Professorship of Jurisprudence, when he was a professor of jurisprudence at Princeton, made clear that he didn't like the Constitution. He thought the Constitution was out of date. It was too lethargic. It made lawmaking too difficult. It made government unresponsive. It was, as he put it, an 18th century document not fit for the 20th century. It was a Newtonian system not fit for a Darwinian age. And so he was willing to just blow past constitutional constraints because he thought they were just relics of an earlier time,
Hmm.
that were just no longer relevant to governing. And so he would just make decisions, including decisions that profoundly violated people's civil liberties, with no congressional authorization whatsoever.
I'm after I have talked recently with Cornel West, and he had a sense of the people are resigned. There's a sense of impotence. I'm getting a very different vibe from you that, let's keep a long view. let's get back in there. Let's quit pointing the fingers at everybody else, but let's all engage again in civil, civic, impassioned discourse as a way to.
I think that's right. The first thing you got to do if you got a problem, no matter what the problem is, maybe a problem in your family, maybe somebody's got an alcohol problem or something like that in the family. The first thing you got to do is acknowledge the problem and take the measure of the problem. Nobody ever dealt with a problem without acknowledging the problem first. Our problem is that we don't want to acknowledge the problem. We want to acknowledge the problem when the other side is in power.
Mhm.
We don't want to acknowledge the problem when our side is in power. We love expansive executive power when our party holds
Right.
the presidency. And suddenly we are strict constitutionalists, strict constructionists on executive power when the other party is in power. We need people uh, of influence and standing, people who have clout with other people
Mhm.
to step forward and model what it means to be a principled defender of Republican democracy.
Safe
Somebody who
people.
calls out Obama and calls out Trump. Now, a good example is our beloved friend Cornel West. Nobody was rougher on Obama than Cornel West was.
Ooh.
And he took a lot of flack on the left because he was tough on Obama. When Cornel is tough on Trump, I pay attention because I know he's principled. He was just as tough on Obama.
I see.
Now, as I say, I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm prepared to be as tough on
Yes.
presidents that I support.
Right.
I mean, I supported Mick. He didn't get the presidency, but I voted for Mitt Romney. I voted for John McCain. But I was as tough on those guys
Right.
as I am on, Obama or Biden or Clinton.
Yes. What you and Cornell after came out with a book called Truth Matters. And I feel like it hasn't gained the attention that it deserves at this point. So I'm
Thank
going to
you.
help spread the word about it. Um, what what are the issues between you and Brother Cornell that you have found difficult to really that are hot button for you too, that you find it difficult? Are you able in even the most uh, provocative lightning rod type of issue, you're still able to maybe not find common ground, but the common
Oh, no, no, we
basis
disagree
of
about many,
discourse?
we disagree about many things. He's honorary co-chairman of Democratic Socialists of America. Suffice it to say that I am not honorary
You are not.
co-chairman of the Democratic
You are not.
Socialists of America. I'm on the conservative side. There's not a single issue that we have any difficulty or
Mhm.
acrimony in discussing. We can discuss anything
Yeah.
because he's an honest person, and I hope I'm an honest person. I want to know what he has to say. If he thinks I'm wrong about something, there's a pretty good chance I'm wrong about it. And so
Really?
I want to hear what his argument is. He's very intelligent, he's very thoughtful, and he's principled, and he's not throwing around a
But
lot of
there's also a
propaganda.
love between you two. There's a philia, a brotherly love, a friendship love that
Rooted in
we could
that shared
expand and
conviction.
extrapolate that, Robin. Uh,
Well, I mean, we entitled our book, and I do hope people will read our book. I mean, I think people just want to hear partisan stuff. And our book is actually a plea against that partisanship. We try to model what it means to engage serious issues from different points of view in a way that's not partisan, not politically partisan, not ideologically partisan. So please share Truth Matters with your children and your that's the title of the book, Truth Matters. Share it with your children and your grandchildren. These are the people who need to have some experience with people actually discussing issues in a reasonable and responsible way and not just, throwing brickbats
mhm.
at each other. But the foundation of the deep brotherhood between Cornell and me, despite our political and ideological differences, is a shared commitment to the proposition that truth matters, that it's better to live with inconvenient truths than with convenient lies, that it's better to know the truth, even if it makes us
Mhm.
anxious and unhappy,
Mhm.
than to live with falsehoods and illusions, even if we got a smile on our face all
Right.
days. That it's worth confronting the truth. Truth matters. And we're never going to get to the truth completely, never going to get it perfectly. Cornell and I agree with that. We are, all of us, frail, fallen, fallible human beings.
Mhm.
And yet, it's worth working to get as deeply as we can toward an understanding of the truth, even if imperfectly, to
Right.
swap out as many false beliefs as we can in our heads
Right.
for true beliefs, and to deepen our understanding of important questions. And the best way to do that is by discussing them with people who have a different perspective from yours,
Hmm.
hearing what's to be said on the other side,
Hmm.
allowing yourself to be challenged by an intelligent and thoughtful critic.
Well, one of the challenges I'm finding after 29 years in the trenches with our dialogue initiatives is there's an increasing habit of people shouting one another down. They really don't
Oh,
even want to
yeah.
hear any alternative possibilities to their truth with a capital T. So they just are that insecure that they feel like they just have to shout the person down. Um,
Terrible. It's absolutely terrible. I mean, if all we do is listen to people who confirm us in our beliefs, then we're going to be confirmed in our beliefs that happen to be true. That's right. We're also going to be confirmed in those beliefs that happen to be false. And all of us know. I mean, honestly, does anybody think that he only has true beliefs in his head? Every single one of us has some false beliefs in his head.
mhm.
And some of those false beliefs are not going to be just about trivial, minor, superficial matters. They're going to be about deep, important, significant matters. If we're to have any hope of swapping out at least some of our false beliefs for true beliefs, then we're going to have to be willing to engage with critics, with people who challenge our beliefs, people who share with us their reasons for thinking about things differently than the way we do.
So that's a great antidote to a very disconcerting shrillness and shouting a person down that I'm seeing today. And I think that you and Cornell definitely model and exemplify the America that we all have to strive to be, if America is truly to be America.
I
So,
agree with that. I agree with that. We need more role models out there. We need prominent people that others look up to, especially young people look up to, who are willing to just lay the partisanship aside. I'm not saying lay your views aside.
right,
Cornell and I don't lay our
exactly. I
views
hear you.
aside, right?
You
We,
know.
we passionately advocate for what we believe in, but we're each willing to listen to the other guy and, willing to consider his reasons. And, if we hear an argument that's compelling, we got to take that into account as we, reformulate and adjust our beliefs.
Beautifully put. Robert P. George, director of the James Madison Program in American Ideals and Institutions and McCormick Professor of Jurisprudence. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's a true gift, and I think that this will really resonate from Americans across the board, helping us sort of think outside us any specifically narrowed time frame and look at where these problems really come from and from whence we can go from here as we the people. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Christopher, and I greatly appreciate all the work that you do. Thank you.
Okay, take good care.
Bye bye now.
Bye-bye.